New York will legalize cannabis. Today we're going over the main parts of the bill regarding cannabis licenses in New York. It's an East Coast episode of... Hi, I'm Tom, a lawyer at the Collateral Base, and you can find me on this YouTube channel, so hit that like button and subscribe for more detailed versions of the numerous license types that are coming to New York. Their legalization contemplates that you will need to stack the license types to go vertical in cannabis in the Empire State. Legalization in New York may not yet be official, but with Governor Cuomo's endorsement of the bill presented, it is a closer reality for New Yorkers. Bill S-854 was presented to the New York Senate on January 6, 2021. We discuss its different license types and the general information about the cannabis license application. Lots of the heavy lifting is actually not in the law itself, but it will get worked out in regulations set by the state's Cannabis Advisory Board, which shall be appointed later. This board will call the shots when it comes to cannabis licenses in New York. New York Cannabis License Application. Any adult can apply for a New York cannabis license to cultivate, process, distribute, or dispense cannabis within New York for sale. Of course, you can also apply as a corporate entity or even a trust. A New York cannabis license application shall be in writing and verified and to contain the information that the board requires. Applications have to be accompanied by a check for the amount required for such license. If the board approves the application, it has to issue a license in such form as determined by its rules. See, lots of this application information we will know after the rules and when we actually have one of the applications. So tune into that video. It'll probably be coming in the spring, summer, fall, hopefully by the fall of 2021. We'll see. Like and subscribe, you'll get notice. A separate license shall be required for each facility at which cultivation, processing, distribution, or retail dispensing is conducted. The board is authorized to adopt regulations, including emergency rules, establishing information which must be included on an application for licensure. Such information in the New York cannabis application may include racial and ethnic diversity, information about their corporate structure, evidence of good and moral character, including submission of fingerprints to the criminal justice services to see if you have a criminal background, financial statements or other information prescribed by regulation. New York cannabis licenses fees. The board has the authority to charge applicants for licensure of a non-refundable application fee. Such fee may be based on the type of license sought, cultivation or production, and the volume of the amount of cultivation and production or other factors that the board deems reasonable and appropriate. The board also has the authority to assess a registered organization with a one-time special licensing fee for a registered organization adult use cultivator, processor, distributor, or retail dispensing license. The board has the authority to charge licenses a biannual license fee. Such fees will be based on the amount of cannabis cultivated, processed, distributed, or dispensed by the licensee or the gross annual receipts of the licensee and some other factors. More money, more problems when it comes to New York cannabis licensing fees. The board shall waive or reduce those licensing fees for social or economic equity applicants. Social and economic equity applicants appears numerous times in the proposed cannabis legalization law in New York State. And there are a limited number of these cannabis licenses. The state has the ability, with the board's recommendation, to set the number of licenses to ensure a competitive marketplace where no one licensee is dominant in the statewide marketplace or in any individual category of those licensing, but also to actively promote and potentially license social and economic equity applicants and to carry out the goals of the new cannabis laws, very much of which appear to be social equity based. To take that, Trulieve, Cresco, GTI, Harvest, every other huge cannabis company out there I didn't name, Curaleaf, for example. Now, we do not know how limited of a market this will create. If the goal is to create a competitive market where no one license holds a market share and to license and promote social equity, then there is going to have to be some limitation, but enough access to these licenses to accomplish the goals. Realistically, with almost 20 million people, New York could support at least 5,000 dispensaries, with thousands more cultivators supplying those people with quality botanicals. Let's hope that's the case, and let's discuss selection criteria for the New York cannabis license applications. Of course, these also will be developed by the board. They're in the future. There is some guidance in the law. Whether or not an applicant should be granted the privilege of an initial adult use cannabis license is based on the following criteria. The applicant is a social or economic equity applicant. The applicant will be able to maintain and control against illegal diversion of the cannabis. The applicant will be able to comply with all the state laws and regulations. The applicant and its officers are ready, willing, and able to properly carry out the activities for which the license is sought, including with assistance from the Social and Equity Incubator Program, if applicable. The applicant possesses or has the right to use sufficient land, buildings, equipment, and property to carry on the activity described in the application, or as a plan to do so if a qualifying social or economic equity applicant. Also looked for in the points will be if the applicant qualifies as a social or economic equity applicant, or if a regular applicant sets out a plan for benefiting the communities and people disproportionately impacted by the enforcement of the cannabis laws. This is reading the tea leaves, because all this stuff is going to be in the future based on what the board decides is an equity cannabis applicant, or an economic equity, a social equity, or what this new benefit thing is. That will be a term of art we will have to tune into later. Remember, growing and selling cannabis in New York is a privilege and not a right. In New York, it is a privilege and not a right to cultivate, process, distribute, and sell adult use cannabis. The number, classes, and character of other licenses and proximate to the location of the particular municipality or subdivision thereof, evidence that all necessary licenses and permits have been or will be obtained from the state or other relevant government bodies, for example, local zoning. The state will also look at what the license will do to the pedestrian or vehicular traffic in the proximity to the license location, the existing noise level at the location, and any increase to the noise, so there's a nuisance abatement aspect to it, the ability to mitigate the adverse environmental impacts, including but not limited to water usage, energy usage, and carbon emissions. So we're going to have a very green cannabis industry in New York. The effect on production and availability of cannabis and cannabis products, they want an adequate supply. The applicant and its managers or officers are of good moral character and do not have ownership or controlling interest in any more licenses than permitted under New York law. And also, the applicant has entered into a labor peace agreement with a bona fide labor organization that is actively engaged in representing or attempting to represent the applicant's employees, and the maintenance of such labor peace agreements shall be an ongoing material condition of licensure. In evaluating applications from entities with 25 or more employees, the office shall give priority to applicants that are a party to a collective bargaining agreement with a bona fide labor organization in New York or any other state, and uses union labor to construct its license facility. Very pro-union in New York, the cannabis laws. The applicant will continue to help disproportionately impacted areas and those harmed by the cannabis laws and report those contributions back to the state. And if that application is for adult use cultivation processor, you have to report on your environmental plan and the energy impact of the facility to be licensed. The application must also satisfy any other conditions the board deems relevant. Also, if an applicant is a registered organization, aka a medical processor already existing in New York, that organization's maintenance of effort and manufacturing in or dispensing and researching for medical cannabis for their certified patients and caregivers. They must do that. And there are some limitations to these New York cannabis licenses, as if we didn't cover enough already. No license of any kind may be issued to anyone under the age of 21. Duh. No license can sell, deliver, or give away any product to anyone under the age of 21. Duh. Unless, of course, that person is a licensed medical patient and they have a valid reason to obtain that. And again, the board, on any recommendation to the office, shall have the authority to limit by canopy, plant count, square footage, or other means the amount of cannabis allowed to be grown and processed. That means we could have stratifications of cultivation and processing license, which is a good thing. All licenses, by the way, they shall expire within 2 years. but you can get those licenses renewed. Each New York cannabis license may be renewed upon the application and payment of a fee. Please note the clear nod to union labor in the law legalizing cannabis because it mandates it will be a union industry. Each applicant must maintain a labor peace agreement with a bona fide labor organization that is actively engaged in representing or attempting to represent applicants in the industry. And that shall be an ongoing material condition of licensure. Let's shift to the New York Cannabis Social Equity Program. We don't know that much about it yet. Social equity principles take center stage in the New York Cannabis Law, and the board shall consult with the State Cannabis Advisory Board and the Chief Equity Officer appointed in this rubric to create a social responsibility framework agreement and make adherence to such agreement a conditional requirement of licensing renewal. So the board will promote applicants that foster racial, ethnic, and gender diversity in the workplace. Each applicant must provide evidence of the execution of their plan for benefiting communities and people disproportionately impacted by the cannabis law enforcement is required for initial licensing and pursuant to the New York cannabis law presented. So we've really done a deep dive on all the things that are in the statute regarding the application. And with that, we can turn to the exciting things, the actual license types themselves. But that will have to wait for another day, as the law is very sparse on details besides the license types. Here they are: dispensary, cultivator, processor, the mysterious small business cooperative, microbusiness, delivery, and nursery. If you want to learn more about those licenses, subscribe and click the bell to get notice of updates to the New York law. And tune into the podcast on Wednesdays and Sundays. Until next time, it's 420 somewhere, and we will see you real soon.